So for this video, we will be discussing what are key performance indicators and how they can benefit. So key performance indicators, KPIs for short, are just a visual measure of performance. So basically, they gauge the performance of a value against a target value. And KPIs just help with the visual representation when it comes time to measuring data. So to start adding KPIs to this pivot table, the first thing that we have to do is create some measures within our data model. And to create measures, we have to go back inside of our PowerPivot window. So let's click the PowerPivot tab, and then we can select either Measures or Manage. I'm going to select Manage because I think it's a little bit easier to see and understand which data we are applying the measures to. So if we click Manage, we can come down and select the cells data, and then any cell that's below this line is where we can insert calculations or measures. For example, let's say that we wanted to get a distinct count of all the product IDs within this data table. So if we select this cell that's underneath this line, but still within the product ID column, we can insert a calculation. And we can do that by coming up to the calculations group, and if we click this drop down next to AutoSum, we can insert the calculation that we want to perform. So in this case, we want to count how many unique product IDs are within this column. So what we need to do is select Distinct Count, and then up here in our formula bar, it shows that it inserted the function of distinct count for the product ID. And if we move our cursor between the product ID column and the units sold column, we can click and drag to increase the size of this column. So down here in our calculation, it shows that we have a total of 10 unique product IDs. Although that this measure is valuable to know, we can't really apply KPIs to the distinct count of product IDs within our pivot table. But a good measure to track would be the amount of units sold per product. So let's select the cell within the units sold column, and then we can apply a calculation here to sum the amount of units sold. So we need to come back to our calculations group, and we can just click AutoSum. And if we expand the width of our column, we can see that the total amount of units sold is 1,055. So that's how we can create measures within our data model. And measures are needed to create KPIs. So now we can go back to our Excel workbook, and if we look at our pivot table fields, we will see two new fields added to our sales data. We have distinct count of product ID and sum of units sold. And this FX icon symbolizes that this field is a measure. But we can use these measures inside of our pivot table. So let's uncheck total sales and then check sum of units sold too. So now we are using that measure inside of our pivot table. And now we are ready to apply KPIs to this measure. So if we come up to our ribbon, we can select KPIs and then click New KPI. In the first box, we need to select the measure that we want to apply the KPI to, and since we have sum of units sold within our pivot table, we need to click this drop down and select sum of units sold to. And then in the next section, we can define a target value so we can see how well the units sold for each product is doing in relation to our target value. Currently, our target value is measuring in percentages. If we want to specify a certain amount for our target value, we can select absolute value. So let's say that our target value for the amount of units sold for each product is 100. We can select this box and type in 100. Now in our little thresholds diagram, we can see that our target is placed in the green. So if the units sold for our product is above 80, it will be in the green, and if it's between 40 and 80, it would be in the yellow, and anything below 40 will be in the red. And then we can select any icon style that we want to place inside of our report. I'm just going to keep the default selected, and then click OK. Well, our pivot table just put 1s, 0s, and -1s inside of our report, instead of the green, yellow, and red indicators. So to fix this, we can come over to our pivot table fields, and then we can select the drop-down next to this stoplight icon, symbolizing that this is a KPI, and then we can just uncheck status, and then check status back again. So now we have these indicators inside of our pivot table. And it's very easy to tell how our products are selling in relation to our target value. So we can come over to our report and instantly tell that the calculator sales are good, the Ethernet cables are doing okay, and then the keyboard sales are down quite a bit. So let's do another example. Let's track the sum of units sold by the city instead of by the product name. So if we come over to our pivot table fields, we can deselect product name, and then we need to select the city within the customer data table. Well, if we scroll down, our customer data is not there, because currently we are only displaying the active fields. If we select all fields, now we are able to see our customer data table. And then we can select our city and drag it to our rows area. Now the reason why I wanted to do another example is to show that our KPI values remain the same. So if we come up to our ribbon and click KPIs, Manage KPIs, and then select Sum of Units Sold To, and if we click Edit, we can see that our target value remained at 100 and our thresholds remained at 40 and 80. So if you ever change the fields inside your pivot table, like what we just did, we went from summing the units sold by the product name to summing the units sold by the city. And you might have different target values depending on the fields that you have in your report. And if that's the case, you would want to open up this KPI window and edit your values. So that's how we can add KPIs to our pivot tables to easily visualize and gauge the performance of our data.